sports are really important vehicles for relationships.
We have purpose. We have a why. We bring people together. We connect.
I feel like God is our greatest supporter and our greatest coach.
We are fortunate this week to be joined not by a coach or a manager, perhaps an athlete or even an owner, but we are joined by a rabbi, Rabbi Jeffrey Abraham of B'nai Emunah in St. Louis. Rabbi, how are you?
I'm doing great, Erez. How are you?
Good. So we are perhaps here to talk about a different type of Gemara, a different type of Talmud, and that's baseball. As I've said many times, baseball is the key to be a rabbi in this great country of the United States of America. And we have invited Rabbi Jeff Abraham because he has a very close connection to our guest, Peter Kurtz, from the general manager of Team Israel Baseball. So let's start there. Jeff, what's that connection with Team Israel and how were you connected in the first place?
Sure, it's a great question and a fun story, certainly. Going back a few years back after the World Baseball Classic, which I know Peter mentioned, there was a realization if we wanted to have a team in the Olympics, that the players needed to be Israeli citizens, right? They couldn't just, the World Baseball Classic rules allow you to play for a country if you could become a citizen of that country. But the Olympics, you actually have to be a citizen of that country. And so Peter set out on a mission first to find players, as he mentioned, that would be able to willing to make Aliyah and be Israeli citizens. And then the second part was actually the process of helping the players to make Aliyah. So one of my good friends and colleagues, Rabbi Jeremy Fine, who
Absolutely.
I will be on as well throughout the season, he got word from Peter, do you know rabbis who could help out in this process of being sort of the sponsoring rabbis for these American-born players to make Aliyah? And so Jeremy immediately enlisted me. And I got to help in the process. And you have to verify, of course, who their family are, and you have to write a letter to the Israeli government. And then in this case, because it was sort of a special scenario, the Israeli government would contact us as rabbis and say, we just want to make sure that that this particular person is Jewish. We would then verify that, and we would have to verify their parents as being Jewish as well, and so on. And so we got connected with the players through that way. I like to joke, at least, that I'm one of the team rabbis for Team Israel. Of course, it didn't give me the opportunity to go to the Olympics as much as I would have loved to. But one player in particular I got really connected with was Blake Guylan, who was really one of the captains of the team. And Blake and I became sort of instant friends. And pre-COVID, this is all happening in 2018, 2019. And so pre-COVID, he was playing in AAA. And so at the time I was at a synagogue in San Antonio, Texas. And anytime he would come through, he was in the Dodgers system. Anytime he would come through, we would do a whole special program, and he would do autographs and get to eat dinner with my kids. And, it was really great. And so it sort of gave us that extra investment to really watch, the team as they went through their Olympic experience as well.
So what was the reaction from some of these players? Because when you're playing for other countries and you need to become a citizen, like whether it's in basketball or things like that, you see, NCAA guys who have some lineage in different countries. What was their knowledge of what Aliyah actually meant? And after the process, what did it feel like? Did they feel a more special connection to the land of Israel?
Yeah, so I would say most of the players I don't think had ever been to Israel before. And for most of them, while they were Jewish, they didn't grow up sort of with that traditional Jewish household. They didn't grow up going to synagogue. Many of them didn't even have a bar mitzvah. And so this is sort of a rediscovery for many of them of their Jewish lineage and learning about it through the process. And Peter did a really great job once we got to the point of them being able to go to Israel, make Aliyah and whatnot. He gave them a full, I think it was 2-week tour of the country, and to really get to meet the people and get to know the people. And at each stop, they would go to the baseball field in that community and put on a little show. And it was such a great opportunity. But the players' reaction was really amazing because, on some level, it's sort of like going on a birthright trip, you could say. But they really fell in love with Israel and the people and really understood who they were playing for when they got to the Olympics. It wasn't just, I'm doing this so I can get to the Olympics. It was, I'm doing this because I belong to a people and I belong to the state of Israel. And watching that transformation was incredible for me as a rabbi as well.
So we had Peter on before the Olympics. We talked about how there were 6 teams, 3 medaled. Unfortunately, we didn't make the 50%. But watching those games this past summer, when you saw those young people that you helped make Aliyah, Israeli citizens, they're not living in Israel, but Israeli citizens now. What was your thoughts about what that meant to the larger sports world at that moment?
I think it was really incredible. I mean, Israel is not necessarily known for their athletic prowess, right? I mean, it's not a country that's won tons of medals in Olympics and world competitions and whatnot. We've gotten very good at judo, as we know, but beyond that, there isn't a lot. And so getting to watch Israel play baseball, I mean, similar to how I felt, I think, in 2017 with the World Baseball Classic, but this time, these were people who had actually taken the time to become Israeli citizens. And there was this great sense of pride hearing Hatikva, right, at an Olympic stadium, even though it was the bubble and there weren't fans in the stands to sing with them. There was something really magical about it. And watching the team, and I got up every night, whatever time the game was at, which were, of course, because it was in Japan, we're at all odd hours of the night.
And I know we were watching together.
Right. Yeah. And watching each of the games, it was really, I just felt such a sense of like, I was part of what they were doing, but they really brought it out. And, the cool part for me was that I have all their cell phones. So I was texting with them before and after games and, analyzing what had happened in the game, but also just getting it. I sort of lived vicariously through them at the Olympics, but getting to have a team. It's the first time Israel ever put a team together in the Olympics, right? That qualified, right? I mean, it was, yes, Israel ended up finishing fifth, right, out of the teams of the Olympics, but something you have to remember is that only 6 teams out of hundreds of countries, right, qualified. The fact that Israel made it through qualification and was the European champion to qualify was, really an unbelievable moment in and of itself. And they were an unfortunate ninth inning away from possibly medaling at the Olympics. And really, for Israel to have an actual team, right? I mean, the chances of them getting a basketball team in or a soccer team in, right, are so slim. But so to put baseball on the map, put Israel on the map through baseball was really amazing. And it also put baseball on the map in Israel, which is really Peter's larger goal, right? To really try to grow the game of baseball in Israel, which hadn't had much success before Peter really got on board a decade ago as well.
So rabbi to rabbi, what do you think it means to young people who sit in your office right there and my office right there when you ask them before their bar mitzvah, what do you want to be? I want to be a Major League Baseball star. But now you and I have the capability to say you can be an Israeli Olympian by what you do in this country. What do you think it meant to young Jews here, connecting them from the diaspora to Israel?
I think it's an amazing piece because, I think you put it perfectly. I have so many kids come through my office and they have these dreams, and generally their dreams are crushed by the time they get to the end of high school, if not before. And now, and I have this conversation with many of our teens here, and middle school kids, and even some older elementary school kids here during the Olympics. I really built it up within the congregation and trying to, get a crowd to watch what was going on. And I said, all these guys playing on Team Israel, they were they had these dreams, and most of them, right, didn't make it to the major leagues, right? There was a couple veterans, that had retired from the major leagues and came up, but the vast majority never got to play Major League Baseball. But here they are playing for Team Israel in the Olympics, and any of us could have that opportunity if we really stick with it. And allowing someone to dream on that level is really incredible. And I already have talked to a few, I have kids that have come through my office and already analyzing, the next time baseball's in the Olympics is 2028, saying, okay, which Jewish players might make it onto the team, and starting to have those conversations. And just the fact that kids can have those conversations, I think is incredible.
Well, it's amazing because those Olympics will be here in Los Angeles.
Right.
And so I think actually America will have this Israeli baseball team probably still made up of young American Jews, and I think it'll be a beautiful moment to celebrate the diversity of the diaspora as well.
Absolutely.
What do you think Rabbi Solomon Schechter, who told Finkelstein that you couldn't be a rabbi in America without knowing baseball, would think that 2 rabbis ordained by the Jewish Theological Seminary are talking like this on a Jewish cable station?
I think he would be very proud of us. I quote Solomon Schechter probably just as frequently as you do, on this particular, on other things, of course, too, but on this particular quote to Finkelstein. And, I think he would say, it was meant as a metaphor, I think, on some level, of course, but it's really meant to, that we have to connect what's going on in the real world with our congregants. And this is what a perfect opportunity, right? We have baseball. It's our national pastime. It's a sport that so many follow, right? I live in St. Louis now, which is baseball is everything here. And you're in LA where baseball is also a
Freddie Freeman town here.
Right. and the reality is that now I have all these kids and we can have the conversation, not just about baseball and who's winning games right now or whatnot, but we can talk about it in a Jewish context. And that's incredible. And relating it and being relatable, to me, that's the best, sort of result of all of this, in general as well.
So let's just dig into your rabbinic library of engagement for just a moment, because we have you together. How do you bring, like you said, Judaism to where the people are? Is it through Frisbee on the field? Is it through more of the academic study of the sport? What does that look like in St. Louis? And actually, by the way, for our audience, Rabbi Jeffrey Abraham, B'nai Emunah in St. Louis, really one of my inspirations in going down this route in sports to connect really two deep passions of ours that have a detailed history in our Jewish people.
So I'll start with a quick story, and then I'll. So when I interviewed for rabbinical school, which is now 20 years ago, they asked me in the interview, if you weren't going to become a rabbi, what would you be? And I said I would go into sports journalism. And then I said that's a much tougher field to get into. And I got blasted, of course, in my interview for saying that. And I still am teased by a few people in that interview to this day. But I meant it, in a sense that getting into the sports journalism field is a challenging field to break into. And whereas the rabbinic field, once you're in, you're sort of in a sense. But I tell that story in the sense that my life in general, right? Like I have always said, I had three passions in life, which was, Judaism, sports, and then journalism, and maybe throw politics in there a little bit. But and so for me, trying to bring those together, I try to do it quite frequently. And one of the ways I've actually done it here at B'nai Emunah, we have a Jewish summer camp, sort of Ramah summer day camp, called Remote Emunah, which we have hundreds of kids at every summer. And so I created, we started last summer and we're going to be doing it again this summer, during the sports chug, right? The sports activity, instead of it just being, okay, we go outside and we're going to play, what sport are we playing today? Basketball, soccer, baseball, whatever it is. I'm out there with the kids and I bring in Jewish values into the teamwork piece of it. And what does it mean that we're trying to play this game? And it was really incredible to watching that development with the kids all summer long. I mean, we're here for 2 months. And it was a great opportunity for me because I got to sort of, A, play sports with the kids, which is always fun, but B, show the kids that sports and Judaism don't have to be sort of on these separate planes. So, so much in our world today, families will have these after school activities and say, well, I don't have time for my Judaism. And what I was trying to teach them is you can have time for your Judaism within your after school activities. And sports being, of course, a major part of after school activities. And a lot of the kids really walked away from this feeling more connected to their Judaism through sports. So I try to do a lot of that. The other piece I do, we have a monthly men's club night where we go to a different place each month, but we watch whatever sporting events are happening at that particular time. It's generally sports bars, but we also bring in a little bit of Torah into that opportunity with this men's group, and it's a great group, and we're able to relate, so there's a little bit of an academic study of Torah, and then we're watching, the playoff, NBA playoffs or NHL playoffs or, whatever Cardinals game might be on, and it's just a great way to bring it all together.
Actually, what Rabbi David Wolpe says here at Sinai Temple is, well, you join a community because what you do in these halls is felt outside. And I also think the inverse is true, is that what you do outside can in fact be brought into our walls in terms of that community gathering as well. Absolutely. So looking towards 2028, is there going to be another round of Aliyah with Rabbi Jeff Abraham helping, or what does that look like? I know Peter asked who's Goldberg, who's Schwartzberg, finding the Jews out on the major league rosters. What does that look like going to 2028?
It's a great question. I think, first of all, I of course I hope that I still get to be involved, and I'm going to make sure to tell Peter that, or he'll watch this back. But in general, I think Peter, on some level, Peter's job is going to be easier, in that I think more people are going to step forward, and volunteer that they want to be part of the team this time around, and so that in that sense, and his job might be more difficult in that there might be more players than there are spots on the team. Ooh. Nice. It's something I sort of anticipate. We talk about, there are some prominent current Jewish baseball players, playing in in the major leagues, like a Max Fried,
Fried shirts, or let's get them
right. And they might be able or wanting to play in the Olympics in 2028. And so then what does that look like? So it'll be really interesting to sort of see, what's the makeup of the team. In addition to the fact that one of the things Peter is working on is trying to develop, a few Israeli baseball players, to also play on Team Israel. And how that looks for 2028, we'll have to see. I should also mention, right, in 2023, there's going to be the next World Baseball Classic, I believe. And so, Israel's going to get, because Israel already finished in 6th place in the last World Baseball Classic, we don't have to go through qualifying like we did last time. So we're in. And so, and maybe it might be 2025. We'll have to look up what the year is. But Israel, so Israel will get to use that sort of as a stepping stone, hopefully again, and also to see which players are interested in playing. And even though you don't have to make Aliyah for the World Baseball Classic, it will be sort of a good chance to start building the team, that will hopefully then get to play in the 2028 Olympics.
So we saw Israel baseball in last year's Olympics. Already looking forward to next year's. We are honored to have Rabbi Jeffrey Abraham, B'nai Emunah, St. Louis, and one of Team Israel's rabbis. If you want to join Team Israel, make sure you contact Rabbi Abraham, get your Aliyah papers in, and Am Yisrael Chai. Have a great week.
Thank you.